Hey guys, welcome to my Atticus Rhodes Dragon deck profile. This is something of a personal project I've been doing. I don't play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Outside of Master Duel, so I've decided to completely dismantle the decks I had in progress and focus entirely on making what I call anime decks. I have a bunch that I've done, plus others I have in the works. This is one of two that are specifically character decks. Now, the problem with character decks from the anime is, depending on how many duels a specific character has, you typically do not see every card they use, especially if they completely change their deck at some point, like how Jaden switched from solely Elemental Heroes to an Elemental Hero Neo-Spacian combo. So, if you want to try recreate a deck from the anime, it's often gonna have gaps to fill out that are entirely up to fan interpretation. With this deck, assuming Atticus uses the minimum of 40 cards, a little over half of it is known, with the rest being my own personal choices. I also wanted to be as accurate as possible, so I tried to only include cards available in the GX era, meaning more modern cards will not be seen. I also decided to borrow some cards from Kaiba's decks, along with the Dragon's Roar structure deck, since I do believe that Atticus' Dragon deck is based on it, plus one or two from Chaz's deck that I felt would make sense for Atticus to use. Another thing I did is change some of the cards to what they are in the anime, again going for accuracy. I'm not bothering with his magnificent stage deck since he only uses it one time and we barely see a dozen cards from it. So let's get into it. First, we'll start off with the cards we see him use, beginning with the three normal monsters, Hunter Dragon and two Red Eyes Black Dragon. I'm not entirely sure if Atticus would have kept the second Red Eyes, and this was during the time when Paladin of Dark Dragon did not exist. I'm guessing they didn't want to make Knight of Dark Dragon a card, since it would have been the odd one out of the Paladin rituals. So I could understand if he did decide to cut it down to one and replace it with something else. But if he did, we don't know what's with, so I'm keeping it at 2. Moving to the effect monsters, we have Attachment Dragon. When this card is summoned, it equips to an opponent's monster and lets you change its battle position once per turn. It is a shame it's not a quick effect and can miss timing since it's a when effect, but that may have been a bit too much back in the day. I do also like the dialogue Atticus gives when he plays it.
Next I summon Attachment Dragon! But don't worry, he's not the attacking type, see? Like his name suggests, he's a lot more of the attaching type.
Next is Cave Dragon. This seems a bit of an odd choice since, unless you normal summon it first, it's pretty much a brick without some way to special summon it. And if you were going second, summoning it by itself would be pointless since it cannot attack if you don't have another dragon out. I know Alexandrite Dragon didn't come out for many years, but surely Atticus had some better choices. Next is Mirage Dragon. While not exactly an ancient gear card, shutting down traps for a battle phase was still immensely helpful back when battle traps were much more prevalent. Next is Red Eyes Black Chick. Yes, I do know this card was renamed Black Dragon's Chick to stop any further except Frog the Jam BS, but this is back in GX when it was still a Red Eyes card by name. Side note, if I were to have a dual spirit similar to Winged Karibo, this little guy would be my choice, if not Dark Magician Girl. Next is Red Eyes Darkness Dragon. It's a real shame this card isn't quite as good as Shining Dragon, since it lacks any form of protection and isn't quite as strong, but the easier summoning condition sort of makes up for that. Next is Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. This card is completely different in the anime. Its anime effect is, this card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card can only be special summoned by tributing one Red Eyes Darkness Dragon equipped with Metal Plus. This card gains 400 attack for each Dragon-type monster in your graveyard. You can negate the effects of spell cards that target this card. You can discard one card to negate the activation and effects of any spell card your opponent controls and destroy it. This is a harder to summon but much better Darkness Dragon. In a couple of ways, it's a bit similar to Dark Paladin. I think it might have been good to at least give base Darkness Dragon the targeting spell immunity, but then they'd have to completely change how Jaden beat it, so I guess it makes sense why it wasn't there. Next is Red Eye's Wyvern. This card really should have been dark attributes to fit the archetype. The only possible reasons why it's wind are either, as Rank 10 Yu-Gi-Oh put it, a factory error that they couldn't be bothered to fix, or because it's a Wyvern dragon and they felt wind was more appropriate. Next is Spear Dragon. It is nice another character used this, and it's great for a beatdown strategy, which is more or less what a deck centered around Darkness Dragon focuses on. Next are 2 Troop Dragon. No way to know if Atticus played a full playset of them. Given that this duel took place after Jaden's duel with Chaz, you have to wonder if Atticus also had a copy of Masked Dragon, since it would work well in his deck. Moving to the spells, we have a Wing Beat of Giant Dragon. Despite the fact that Atticus has this card, we only really see Bastion actually use it in GX, though the only logical target Atticus has for this is vanilla Red Eyes, meaning he would need a way to bring it back to the field or have something to summon afterwards so his field isn't empty. Next is Dark Factory of Mass Production. The fact that Atticus plays this implies he has more vanillas in his deck. We only see 3, but I should think he has more, otherwise this gets dangerously bricky. Next is Dragon's Gunfire. It's not the best removal as it's very specific, and the 2 times it is played, the burn effect is never used. But it's still a fun card to have, and I like that you get a choice. Next is Dragonheart. You send 3 dragons from your deck to the graveyard and temporarily boost a dragon you control by 1000 attack, but you're locked into only special summoning for the turn. This is best used in conjunction with one of the 2 Darkness Dragons. Not only will they get the 1000 attack boost, they'll also get an additional 9 to 1200 extra attack from their effects. Next is Inferno Fire Blast. I do like the signature attack spells, but they do vary in usefulness. This is one you definitely want in multiples, though that would be overkill in the anime since 2 of them is an instant OTK outside of the extremely rare times characters have 8000 life points. Next is Mystical Space Typhoon, hands down the best single back row removal card. A shame it's been power crept, but its legacy lives on. Next is Super Rejuvenation. Anyone who played in Dragon Ruler formats will remember this card well. While maybe not as broken as Spellbook of Judgment was, it was still a key card in that deck. Next is Swing of Memories. I do like the symbolic meaning of this card, how it shows the bond between Atticus and Alexis, despite their squabbles. It's also a pretty decent normal support card. Finishing this half of the deck with the traps, we have Burst Breath. Despite being slow as it's a trap card, this is pretty good removal, especially if you tribute something with huge attack. Won't do jack against Lynx, but those didn't exist in GX. Next is Call of the Haunted, a staple revival card back in the day, and a great card to combo with Jinzo. Next is Metal Plus. This card can equip to a monster you control and give it targeting protection against spells. I can't say for certain, but it's possible this might have been the inspiration for Rare Metalmorph. Next is Negate Attack. This really needs no explanation. Several characters use it, though I have to question why it's a trap when in the Duel Monster sub it's a quick play spell. Next is Offensive Guard. This can halve the attack of an opponent's monster attacking you directly and let you draw a card. Kind of a prototype defense draw, though that card is a lot better as it can be used against any attack and completely negates the damage. Next is Red Eye's Burn. If you can manipulate life points, you can have this end a duel in a draw, and we all know how Konami feels about draws. Finally is Red Eye Spirit. This is also completely different in the anime. It lets you revive a Red Eyes monster that was destroyed the same turn, and bypasses its summoning conditions. This is what you would use to bring back one of the 2 Darkness Dragons, specifically Darkness Metal, as its summoning condition is stricter than base Darkness Dragon. So those are all the cards we see Atticus use in the anime, but that's only 28 cards out of 40, so these next 12 cards are my own personal choices that I feel Atticus could have used. First are 3 more normal monsters, Blackland Fire Dragon, Luster Dragon, and Luster Dragon number 2. This is primarily to give more targets to Dark Factory, but they can also be used as beaters, especially the Luster Dragons since number 2 has the same attack as Red Eyes, but only needs 1 tribute, and Luster Dragon can supplement Spear Dragon. Next is Element Dragon. For those unaware, this card is part of the Element series of monsters that gain effects based on what attributes are on the field. For Element Dragon, it gains 500 attack when there's a fire monster on the field, and if there's a wind monster on the field, it can double attack BLS style. We can't confirm if Atticus had any fire monsters in his deck, but we definitely know he had wind, so this card would have been a good fit. Next is Masked Dragon. If Chaz can play this card, so can Atticus. I've only put in one since, while running multiple copies of cards in the anime wasn't unheard of around this time, most characters tended not to. I could probably put in a second, and may do so in the future. Next is Spirit Ryu. That last part can actually be pronounced different ways. This would be a great card for Atticus to use. Not only would it help him get over something big, provided he had enough dragons to discard, it also helps Darkness Dragon by filling the graveyard. So I see little reason why he wouldn't want to run it. The last monster is Twin-Headed Behemoth. This is mainly just to give another dragon for the deck, but it would work well with some of the other cards. Moving to the spells, I've put in Monster Reincarnation. I don't know the exact details, but I do believe Monster Reborn got banned sometime during the airing of GX. This card would be a good way to get Darkness Dragon back, in addition to putting a dragon in the graveyard. Next is Pot of Greed. Why wouldn't I put this in? It was a staple until the end of the Society of Light arc. There's no way Atticus wouldn't put this in. Next is Quick Summon. This wasn't an extremely common card to use in the anime, but being able to quick play summon something would be very helpful, especially since monsters can be normal summoned in defense in the anime. For the traps, I've added Dragon's Rage. This pretty much has to go in any dragon-themed deck. It's a little surprising it was never used by Atticus. The final card I decided to put in is the Dragon's Bead. Against any traps that targets, this would be extremely helpful, and the discard is fitting for this particular deck. It's not blanket protection, but it's something. And that's the whole deck. I'm pretty happy with it, even though I would only be playing this against people doing the same thing. Let me know what you think, and if you'd like to see any of the other anime build decks, as I call them. As always, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on X, consider backing me on Patreon, and remember to stay chilled.